Hello, welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. Today's review is going to be on cookies. My name is Funmi. I'm the principal attorney at the law firm, the Data Privacy Lawyer, where we provide advisory to businesses on how to understand data protection laws and how to comply with them. We're going to be looking at cookies for Dell. Now we've got this cookie banner. We've got a decline all, accept all, and manage your cookies button. So according to Dell, the website uses cookies and other tracking technologies to enhance a user's experience and to analyze performance and traffic on the website. They also share the information about a person's use of the site with their social media, advertising, and analytic partners. If we have detected an opt-out preference signal, then it will be honored. That's really good. I want to talk about this. Specifically in the United States, there's something called a GPC control. It is more prominent in some US states in terms of data protection legislation than others, but it's a very crucial, important point for businesses to capture, especially for their obligations coming out of California. Now, currently as it stands in the United States, California has probably the most protections for individuals out of every other US state legislation. There has been discussion on creating federal privacy legislation. I talk about that in my podcast, the Data Privacy Download, if you want to take a look at that. But essentially, the GPC controls are very crucial. It's something that a lot of businesses don't realize they have obligations under. But I love that Dell has put this into the cookie banner. We're actually going to manage our cookies. I want to demonstrate something for you. So I'm accessing this site in the United States. If you've watched any of my reviews in the past, you know I've talked specifically about different obligations businesses have from geography to geography. Now I pulled this up because we've already read this, right? But I'm going to scroll down. We've got here essential, marketing, and statistical. My personal preference when it comes to a banner is to utilize the same language throughout the cookie banner, throughout the preference center, and throughout the notice. Now, I'm going to show you what I mean in a minute. We're going to opt out. I want to talk about this, the flow. The first thing that should be presented is that banner. Decline all, accept all, manage your cookies. The second thing is individuals should have the opportunity to manage their preferences. In the United States, where I am, businesses have the opportunity to opt me in. You can see I've already been opted in for marketing and statistical, but I have the opportunity to opt out. If I was accessing this in Europe, and I might try this in 2026, I'm going to try and access this site. I'll put my VPN on and we'll access it in Europe, because in Europe, it's not the same. In Europe, individuals have the opportunity to opt in. Their preference center should be grayed out like this. But it's different in the US because I only have their obligations. Dell's obligation to me as a resident of the States is to give me the opportunity to opt out. Now, the reason I called out the essential, marketing, and statistical is because they've used language in their banner about performance. And they did talk about advertising too. Now, essentially, my statement on this is going to be, as long as you are being transparent about your practices, then you have fulfilled obligations about transparency under the data protection laws. What I think is useful for organizations to do is to recognize the audience that is going to be reviewing or seeing this cookie flow. You've talked about analyzing performance and traffic on the website, but performance cookies haven't been listed here. When you look at an audience, this is not a legal audience. I understand what's going on here. Consumers that are accessing this cookie notice may not understand this. So in order for them to reconcile what's placed on the banner and what's placed in the preference center and then what's subsequently placed on the notice, it's important to use similar terminology. They've used marketing and statistical here, right? But let's confirm our choices. We don't see in that banner the word statistical at all. So consumers might be a bit confused. It's important for consumers not to be confused. I understand what's happening. Consumers may not. You got to think about the audience. And one of the reasons I think it's valuable to have a legal counsel that assists you is we also look at the audience in which a notice is being presented, a policy is being presented, whether or not it's documentation that's being distributed between legal counsel. There is a tone that we place on documents depending on the audience. I don't want to dwell too much on that. Let's carry on to the notice. The notice explains how Dell and its technology partners, including the service providers, use cookies and other similar tracking technologies to collect information from your browser. The notice also provides details about how to manage your choices with respect to cookies and other similar technologies and forms part of Dell's privacy statement. I love this. It's excellent because the cookie notice and privacy notice work hand in hand. It's all personal data, right? So they're given a definition of cookies and they've also given a definition of the other technologies. So I will make mention of this. When we looked at the preference center, we saw essential cookies, marketing, and statistical. The only thing that we didn't see on the banner, which was displayed here, is the word statistical. I like that the preference center aligns with the cookie notice. Essential, marketing, and statistical were outlined and you could manage your preferences. What I thought was unique was the use of the word performance in the banner. I would say that my preference would be use the same language here and in the preference center on that banner. That would be the only change. How do we and our providers use cookies and similar technologies? We and our technology, analytics, and advertising providers use these technologies in our sites and services. I'm interested in whether or not this is addressed above. Okay, it is. Excellent. So businesses need to be very, very particular when drafting these notices, because generally the cookie notice applies to usage of the site. Dell has included services here. The reason I highlighted the services below is because there always needs to be consistency in who you're addressing and making sure that you've outlined in the scopes. For example, right? Let's say, for example, the only reference above here in the cookie notice was using our sites. This notice addresses how we use our sites, but then services had been mentioned below. That would be something I would scrutinize. Because you've mentioned services here, but you've not mentioned it above, but Dell has. This has been a very good review of what a cookie notice may look like. Now, it depends on geography. Dell is a global organization. This notice is probably presented globally. So all of the obligations in all the data protection laws have been captured together and have been addressed in this notice, because every geography, and I mentioned this when we were looking at the banner, I mentioned how every geography has rules that a business has to follow, and the business needs to look at where its sites and services are offered and look at all of the legal obligations in all those geographies. I like to give a good example of this in that when companies are looking to create a business entity globally, they never just say, oh, well, we're headquartered in the US, so we don't care what the laws are in the Netherlands when forming a business entity. So I think it's quite unique that businesses try to only look at privacy laws where they're headquartered, for example, in the United States, but they don't look at what the privacy laws might be in the Netherlands or might be elsewhere. There is a newness to data protection, and that a lot of businesses try to ignore, even though they would not be able to ignore obligations under formation of business entities in other geographies. And one of the reasons I think the Data Privacy Lawyer as a firm is very interested in continuing to create these reviews is essentially in order to educate businesses of all sizes on what their obligations are, essentially. I think there's two different ways to look at this. One, maybe they don't realize they have privacy obligations outside of where they're headquartered, and two, maybe like it's not a priority. But it is a priority for the business to understand its obligations when forming a legal entity in a specific country. So that type of energy needs to be funneled towards using personal data, because you as an organization can't function without personal data. You could definitely function without having a legal entity in a different geography, but you definitely cannot function in any geography without personal data. So I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you like this type of content and you like looking at reviews on different businesses, how they process personal data, subscribe to my channel and I will see you in another video.